going live. We're going live. Oh, whoops, I don't have myself turned on just yet. Pardon me. There we go. I'm on camera. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're back again. We're back at the helm once more. This is Weather Center Live at 8 p.m. July 1st, 2024. It feels like June was literally a whirlwind for all intents and purposes at this point, guys. And we're back at the helm once again for our evening live update, tropical update. Where is Hurricane Beryl going off to now? Beryl, however you want to pronounce it. We had some very, very disastrous impacts today for the likes of Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Lucia actually realized a bit of a higher end impact than the wind field alluded to, which is more or less what we were anticipating. All three of those nations should have been on high alert as this system came through, and a lot of other sources are beginning to recognize that maybe the storm was not as compact as initially believed. That's neither here nor there. Thankfully, I can very, very humbly say, and I'm thankful for this, that we managed to see the system press through and progress exactly as we had forecast yesterday, the day before yesterday, and through this morning's live stream as the center of circulation bear down on our islands, particularly the Windward Island nations. The 4 to 6 a.m., 4 to 7 a.m. time frame lined up spectacularly for Trinidad, Tobago, and Barbados, and the 10 a.m. almost on the dot. 10 a.m., I believe it was around 10:25, 10:30 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time is when the webcam from some of the chasers down there, the intercepts that were going on in the eye wall, recorded the strongest core of the winds working their way through. And then shortly after noon, approaching 1 o'clock, just as we had forecasted, things finally began to let up, and the system was far enough downstream to no longer pose a very, very, very significant threat. Obviously, we're still dealing with some residual impacts that is expected to continue through the early overnight hours of tonight and into tomorrow morning, but that system is still boogalooing off to the west-northwest, and we have a new update as well. So right now, we're kind of, we're still not in the full extent of when this thing is expected to weaken, but we are flirting with even more historical record here. We're flirting with the nature of the beast here. We are now at 155 mile an hour sustained winds. We have deepened all the way down to 938 millibars in the center of circulation. And guys, I want us to take a second to really digest this, okay? Look at the date here. Think about the time of the year. Think about climatology. Think about history in of itself. We have set multiple records with this system. Multiple records, not just one. We have officially stolen the show with just about every single record that there is at this point, minus, I believe, Category 5, but we're flirting with that. We're right. We just need 1 mile an hour. And you know what? I would honestly argue that maybe we're not upgrading for the sake of splitting hairs, but I would imagine, based on what I see on satellite imagery, National Hurricane Center, the reconnaissance aircraft out there are likely going to find that 1 mile per hour. If not, they can probably round up to 156 mile an hour and call this a Category 5. It's got the look. It's got that textbook, dangerous, life-altering, life-changing hurricane structure to it. And even with the wind shear in the mid-level starting to kind of act on its outflow a little bit, it's still a really impressive system. And it's almost going to be difficult to watch this thing potentially fall apart as rapidly as expected. But with that being said, let's get into this. So here it is on satellite imagery. You can see we are now well downstream of our islands. Barbados is in the clear. Trinidad and Tobago is in the clear. We are not really seeing too much in the way of activity now for any of our Windward Islands either. We are pretty much all clear at this point in time. You're seeing a little bit of anticyclonic outflow and feeder banding associated with our TUT. You can kind of see it spinning around up and through here. That's what's going to help to increase our wind shear out ahead of this system. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It took me a little longer to prepare this brief for you guys because there's a number of different charts that I want to show you as we now can look a bit more long-term. As I'd mentioned the last couple of live streams, I wanted to get this system from here to here, and we are finally through. We can put the worst of the storm behind us for all of our Lesser Antilles. You're still seeing some residual impacts. You're going to be okay. You can see quite a bit of thunderstorm activity along the northernmost apex of this system, a little bit of outflow cordoned off by our upper trough in the atmosphere here. You can see it getting pulled off towards the north and northeast. That's what's kind of helping to advect and increase the amount of thunderstorm activity we have on its northern apex, but the core of the storm has shrunk a little bit. We're looking at, once again, that very, very buzzsaw-like appearance as our outflow kind of decreases in height. We're not seeing as much upper-level cirrus on the satellite imagery. Still a very potent storm, still obviously a strengthening storm at that. We are rocking and rolling off towards the west-northwest at approximately 280, 290 degrees. Now the question on the table here is, does it continue to maintain its current course? How much do we see in a wobble towards the north? How much do we see in a wobble towards the south? Because now, next up, we're going to see our increasing in coverage of thunderstorms and elevated winds for the U.S. British Virgin Islands. Puerto Rico is going to get a little bit of outer lying effects from it. Hispaniola, we have tropical storm warnings in effect, and the hurricane watch is still in effect for Jamaica. That will likely be upgraded if this system can hold on to hurricane characteristics as it moves off towards the west-northwest. Coming on into a look at the water vapor does an even better job of showing where it is that our wind shear is going to increase. So there is an area of very unfavorable environment just out ahead of it. So if you look at the water vapor signature for Beryl, specifically Beryl, notice that our upper cloud features, our upper moisture values here, they're not really going anywhere. You see that perfect anticyclonic curvature at the highest point of the atmosphere, way above where the center is, and the low levels look very good. Perfect symmetry along either side. That eye is not caving in. It is perfect in nature. 10 out of 10 in terms of aesthetics here. But then downstream of it, if you look, we have a lot of flow coming out of the southwest, moving across the central Caribbean. And this is hopefully what's going to help to level off this system and hopefully weaken it as it moves off towards the west-northwest. Pardon my manners, I haven't even popped the chat out yet so I can talk to all you guys. Let me go ahead and pop the chat out so I can say hello to a few folks. We got a lot of individuals in the chat. Let's make sure we're nudging that like button, guys. Let's see who we got. Zenful, Daddy Shark, Amanda Kirby, Nomad Avenue 6, Godzilla, brand new to the chat. I haven't seen you in here just yet, but good to see you. Supercharged, Judy Tokos, Melita Ebanks, Mike, good to see you. Swow, My Mind Over Your Matter, Sharon Jackson, you made it in. Kevin Rivera, thanks for tuning in. April, Suzanne, Thea Elba, thank you so much for tuning in from Puerto Rico. It's wonderful to have you in the chat tonight. PM, Richard Perez, K-Pop Lover, Shinsuke, Suo, One Nation Weather, good to see you, buddy. Thank you very much. TG Herman, greetings. Black Batman, Nomad Avenue 6, once again, let's see who else do we have. Jose, Dolson, M4DCOW, however you say that name, and so on and so forth, folks. Thank you all for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to drop them in the chat as we move along. Gary, what's going on? Good to see you. Helen and Wilhelm Noor, good to see you guys. Flightman Brian, Florida, USA, ASAP Bryce. All right, let's continue to go, shall we? So the dry air is not going to be an impediment to this system. I have this AOI pulled up because I also wanted us to take a quick glance at Invest number 96. So there's the center of it. 96L is still moving along. It's still moving towards the west-northwest, but we have a ton of anticyclonic outflow that's buffeting the front side of it on the west. And then as you can see, a ton of dry air has worked in along its forward quadrant as well. So this is ideally what a lot of folks were hoping would happen with Beryl, that the dry air and the wind shear was going to weaken it, but unfortunately this is our anomaly. This one does not look like it's going to be doing quite as well. We'll have to see what happens, and then we'll have to pay close attention to all this activity that's bubbling off. Nothing in the guidance as of yet. We did have a weak signal a couple of days ago, but that has since kind of waned off at this point. We're not really seeing that come to fruition anymore, but naturally we're going to keep an eye on it. Here's a very, very up-close and personal look with Beryl. Again, you can kind of see and make out where our islands are. Here we go. So this is Barbados. We have St Lucia here. We have Martinique to the north. Or no, excuse me, that's St Vincent and the Grenadines. Here is Grenada, St Lucia, just to the immediate north there. These were our islands directly afflicted by Beryl early this morning. There's Tobago and Trinidad. Thankfully, we are only seeing some very residual activity over the higher terrain features out there. Some mechanical lift, it looks like, in the cloud cover that's moving off towards the backside of it, towards the north-northwest. Our system is way out ahead of this area, but the impacts were immense. The impacts were immense, and I actually hope that somehow, some way, we have some folks tuning in from that area who can testify in the chat exactly what went down there. Seriously, if anybody in the chat can testify If you're from down there in the Windward Islands, please, either from Trinidad all the way up to Barbados to St Lucia, St Vincent and the Grenadines, as well as Grenada. If you are able to get in the chat, please let us know a full-fledged testimony as to what went down now that we are finally in the clear, and this thing's going to continue to move off towards the west-northwest. Still a phenomenal looking storm, a historic storm. I don't really know what other adjectives I can put on the table to express the gravity of this situation. This is an ominous sign for what's to come, undoubtedly. And it does seem like it's gaining a bit of latitude. It really does. So we're actually going to anticipate some feeder banding working their way up towards the U.S., British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Tia Elba, and those of you, Kevin Rivera, joining us from Puerto Rico. You're going to start feeling the effects of this. It's going to be overcast and cloudy for at least another day or so until this system can continue to move off towards the west and get downstream of your neck of the woods. Here is our general steering current. I have this pulled up because I want to show you guys exactly what is working with this system and what is working against it. So if you see, we have a trough over the northeast United States. I'm going to switch the color of the ink here so you guys can see a little better. Here's our current trough working its way off the northeast and mid-Atlantic coastline. This is what helped to kind of increase our severe thunderstorm coverage over the last 24 hours. That is since moving downstream, and that's going to help to push this ridge further off towards the east as well so it can plant itself over the southeast and continue letting the system work off towards the west-northwest. I'll be honest, that color ink really didn't help our case here. There you go. So this is anticyclone number 1. This is our Atlantic anticyclone. The trough here is going to continue moving, and this is the trough, the next one that we want to pay close attention to, that is being a bit difficult, being a bit stubborn in the long term. Here's a look at our wind shear. So like I said, we're still in a very favorable setup. And honestly, even 96L is in a very favorable environment in terms of our wind flow out there. It is right underneath an anticyclone. You can kind of see it in the streamlines. It may be a little difficult for you guys to pick up. It is right there in the streamlines, but it's just the dry air. The dry air and the anticyclonic localized shearing effect, the downward vertical velocities on the backside of Beryl is what's helping to keep that thing smothered. Our hurricane models still think that we could see some very, very delayed or latent development from that system. So we're not going to take our eyes off of it, obviously. We're going to take our eye, I mean, we're going to keep it going, as much as we possibly can. So yeah, we're going to keep paying attention to both these systems, and then we have a break on the horizon, guys. It's not all about Beryl and Invest 96 and all that, guys. We have a break coming, okay? We're getting there. We're almost time. We can go and take a little hiatus from the tropics. We'll continue to update you guys with this rigmarole of tropical update, major hurricane, and all that. We're going to get a break before the real stuff begins to fire off, okay? There's our area of hostile wind shear. You can see it plain as day here. We have 40-plus knot winds out of the southwest, west-southwest, that are screaming across the Central Caribbean. That is going to be our protective barrier that's hopefully going to weaken this system down as it progresses further towards the west-northwest. In the next 24 to 30 hours, we will know more or less exactly what happens with that system. Here's a look also at the mid-level steering current. So since this is a major hurricane and a strong hurricane at that, we can use our mid-level all the way up to our upper-level flow. Believe it or not, it's been founded in science that typically our weaker to mid-grade tropical cyclones, they tend to follow the 850 to 500 millibar pattern the most, with a bias to that 850 and 700 millibar level. As they gain vertical extent and they gain that energy and that rapidly rising motion towards its center, we start to obviously get higher in the atmosphere, so you have to start looking at layers like 500 millibars, 400, 300, all the way up to 250 and even 200 millibars. So what we have here is going to be our 300 to 850 millibar average flow. These are the streamlines here. The three things I want you to pay attention to are our anticyclone out there in the Atlantic, our first trough here, followed by the second one. This is going to be the critical one, and our anticyclone right here that's moving through the southern plains towards the southeast. Another area of note is notice this acceleration in the wind flow out here. These are our trade winds, our 850 millibar to our 700 millibar trade winds out of the east. And that is also what's anticipated to increase our localized shear and prevent this thing from staying as perfectly vertically stacked as it is. That's why our models are definitely thinking we're going to see weakening, but This has probably been one of the hardest forecasts in a long time. At this point, I would honestly wish that we had August, September, October criteria, so we know from here it's going to do this, from here it's going to do this, from there it's going to do this, and so on and so forth. We don't have that. Our models are still very much so, I'm going to say, broken. They're not literally broken, guys, but they're just all over the place. We're seeing trends in either direction. We're seeing, shifts in either direction, and in intensity and in track. And I think those are going to be our two pivotal players here. Intensity is going to be what makes or breaks this system, and then with that intensity being said, we're going to see whether or not our steering current has more of an influence or less of an influence. If it's weaker, it'll have less of an influence. These tropical systems tend to be a little bit more sensitive to our characteristics around it when they're stronger. When they're weaker, they're just going to keep moving towards the west. They're going to hover around the equator and then disappear. And that's kind of what we're rooting for here. At least most of our models are rooting for that this thing's basically going to disintegrate. So if you see this, we're going down in the atmosphere now. Now we're looking at our mid-level flow predominantly, 850 to 700. There's your increase in the winds just out ahead of this system. So when we wake up tomorrow, we may see a bit more of a raggedy presentation on satellite imagery as it gets ready to approach Jamaica, Hispaniola, and the Cayman Islands. Now this is our saving grace here. The trade winds and the movement of our anticyclone in the mid-levels towards the east. Because if you look, if the pattern were to stay as it is in this trough, we're going to deepen faster and stay around. We had a blocking pattern, hypothetically, this would be lifting further to the north fast. That's not going to be the case here. Not going to be the case here. Our trough is going to rapidly move around the apex of our anticyclone, our ridge, out over the Atlantic, and that's going to allow this ridge axis to start to merge together and create that barrier here, continuing to push it off towards the west. The problem is intensity forecasts. It's going to be very tricky. I just wanted to pull this up once again to show you guys that we're not seeing it breaking down. It is still very, very symmetrically put together, and this could be changing over the next 24 hours. We'll have to see how much of this internal structuring we can maintain. That's going to be pivotal in whether or not this can maintain hurricane status, or if it does fully fall apart like the GFS and especially the Euro is thinking. I don't know why I have so many infrared satellites pulled up, to tell you the truth. I didn't think this was another one. All right, so I was looking at this as well. This is not part of the presentation. I just was looking at this before the chat started because I wanted to show you guys just very quick glance why it is that we're going to be going on a break, a definitive break this time. So here we are. We're looking at our anomalies sitting right out there over the Atlantic. Beryl is moving through the pattern, even though we are starting to see our gates of tropical activity close off. Some indications here that maybe the Eastern Pacific may finally get its first named storm. We've been quiet. We're pushing 2 months now, and we haven't had a single thing out there in the East Pac, so maybe it'll get going, maybe it won't, we'll have to see. But then mainly the meat and potatoes on this slide, guys, is from about July 11th all the way to the back end of July. I'm thinking the last 7 to 10 days of July, we're going to be quiet. And then it's all hands on deck. You can see at that point, we're just going to be seeing potentially back-to-back systems. We're going to be in phase with our upper-level velocities, our rising motions over the Atlantic and the Caribbean, in sync with our African standing wave and the immense African easterly jet that's going to start refiring our tropical waves out there. So from here and down, if you follow the y-axis on this chart, guys, that's on the right-hand side. If you follow the y-axis, we're going forward in time as you go down the chart. The x-axis down here is going to be your longitudinal line. So from here to here is going to be the Atlantic and the Caribbean main development regions. And you can see we're kind of just seeing the first glimpse of what's going to be coming later on down the road. Because as we're under a month now. As a matter of fact, we got about 2.5 weeks. And I anticipate, if all goes according to plan and we don't see shifts here, I need everybody in the chat, all my new subscribers, all my long-term subscribers, I need everybody coming back to this channel because I have a feeling it's July 1st right now. We'll probably start to see our signals down the road begin to go up by about July 12th to July 14th. So as we get closer to this point in time, July 16th, just before that and on, if you think about it, our long-range models can go about 10 to 14 days. So right around July 12th to, we'll go ahead and even it out. We'll say right around July 16th is our medium date range. I want to say you guys really need to start checking back in here because I think we're going to start seeing our tropics beginning to show us those small signals. And then as we get closer to the month of August, we're going to see those signals beginning to go up. This is our control member, but if you go through the different ensembles, you can see strong signals going down the road, very strong signals going down the road. Still, same signal, very strong. All the individual members are thinking we're going to continue to see favorable conditions really setting up as we get closer to the end of July and into August. That's when the gates are really going to open up. So I really do think once we get to about that same time frame we were anticipating we would see Alberto in June, between the 10th to the 21st, right around there is when we're going to start to see those long-term signals slowly but surely percolating out there. So what I have here, guys, is a GIF, a forecast trend GIF. And the reason I have this pulled up, this is our European 500 millibar geopotential heights. And I want you looking at this shade of blue here. And I want you looking at the shades of red down here over the mid-Atlantic, the southeast, and parts of the Caribbean. And what we're doing is we're looking at how the model is trending. We have 4 different model runs here, 12, 0, 12, 0, starting 48 hours ago. And the key takeaway here is our blues are increasing, which is showing a sharper amplitude trough over the upper Midwest, the Great Plains, extending down towards the southern plains. And as a result, we're seeing a bit more of a eastward retreat in our ridge. So as this goes through time, as we know with weather, it's like a domino effect. We're not necessarily going to see things snap into place immediately. We have to watch the trends. And right now we're seeing subtle tugs toward the north. Our ensembles have been highlighting it. And now slowly but surely our operational models are trying to get on board with it. Where they're struggling is with the intensity. The intensity is where we're struggling. So we need to keep our eyes open. There's still a lot of people out there. I don't know why. I really wish we would stop that. That's well, I remember the feedback I've gotten. I really wish that we would stop isolating ourselves to, a one all end all be all one track solution. That is not the case. So if I were you guys in Texas and Louisiana, you need to keep your eyes open, okay? No cause for alarm. I'm going to continue to say that until this thing is finally into Mexico. But we need to keep our eyes open for Texas and Louisiana, specifically Texas. I really do think as we're getting closer in time, we're within the 5-6 day window, give or take, we're going to start to see more consensus as this system begins to impact Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. We need to continue to watch this trend here. Because you can see back on June 29th, as we started, late in the evening, June 29th to now, this afternoon, 12 Zulu, we're seeing that the European model is thinking more cold air is going to try to come down from Canada, from the the poles, and reinforce our trough here. And as a result, the ridge is going to build northward. It's not going to be as expansive. It's not going to be broadened out. That's kind of how the long wave pattern, the waves work in the big picture. The stronger your trough, the stronger the northern reach of your ridges will be on either side, okay? The weaker your systems, the more zonal everything will be. So if we had a weaker trough, the ridging over the east and over the Atlantic will be more spread out, creating a much wider, more broad shield for everybody. The fact that we're seeing amplifying of our trough over the center of the United States means that the ridging on either side, you can see red shading over western Conus, you can see red shading over eastern Conus. You can see how the red shading begins to build northward as opposed to west to east. So this is critical. If we switch on over to the GFS, I have the GFS ensembles here pulled up. We're seeing the same thing. The GFS is thinking the same exact thing. We're seeing a bit of deepening of a upper low and a trough off the west coast just to the south of the Aleutian Islands. We're seeing amplifying of our ridge here, and we're seeing digging of our ridge over the east coast. And we're starting to see a bit more exposure down here, particularly for Louisiana and Texas. At this point in time, I'm not concerned about Florida, not looking at Mississippi, not looking at Alabama, not looking at the southeast. I'm not looking at Florida. Yeah, I'm looking at Texas mainly. If we were to see anything try to move towards the United States, I'm looking at Texas, maybe the western extent of Louisiana. I'm going off of the trends here. I'm not saying that's what I'm anticipating. I'm not saying that's what I'm forecasting, but we need to be watching from Jamaica, Cayman Islands, all the way through to the western Gulf Coast for sure. PM, are you talking to me or are you talking to the chat? Because obviously National Hurricane Center is official information, but National Hurricane Center didn't have anything on the charts, and this channel is responsible for at least drawing some awareness to this feature that is now barreling through the Caribbean. So please allow me to discuss what it is I'm seeing from a forecaster's perspective. Please. Please. And I'll show you guys, we'll get even deeper into the weeds here. So if you look, this is our latest ensemble guidance from the European model. Now the key takeaway here, okay, thank you. I'm glad you're talking to the chat because we definitely don't need full-on theorizing. There's a lot of fear-mongering going on out there, and I don't like that either. There's a lot of fear-mongering on X specifically, and I'm not a fan. There's also some folks on TikTok blasting out that Category 6 for Texas, and that's bogus. But anyways, I actually do agree with these ensembles here. This is today's 12 Zulu ensemble run from the European ensemble group. And you can see if the storm manages to stay sort of organized, the key takeaway here is we could see something like this. Notice that large margin of error, though, okay? Don't look at the individual lines. Look at the margin of error here. If this stays weak, you can see all our weak members just lose it. Goes towards Belize, goes towards Mexico. For my viewers out there who've been asking a lot about Curacao, Cozumel, Costa Maya, Playa del Carmen, all the eastern coastline of the Yucatan Peninsula up to Belize or down to Belize City, even into further interior Belize, you need to be watching no matter what. If this thing goes north or if this thing goes south, you can see regardless, ensemble members have you guys blanketed late July 4th. July 4th into the 5th. Into the 5th. I know that my writing with my mouse is terrible, but evening of July 4th into the morning hours of July 5th, this Thursday and into Friday, we should have Beryl coming in either to Belize or somewhere in the Yucatan Peninsula. If you want my timetable, I have it broken down here. I made a lot of notes today. My timetable is for Jamaica, Cayman Islands, and Hispaniola. You're going to be starting to see impacts around July 3rd, very early July 3rd. It looks like the timetable for Hispaniola for those tropical storm conditions, then Jamaica, then the Cayman Islands, starting as early as 3 to 6 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time, especially for Jamaica. Conditions are going to start going downhill, and then we'll follow that up with the domino effect just out ahead of them further to the west, the Cayman Islands, around 8 a.m. Between 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. is when things are going to start going downhill. Timetable for you guys, once again, just like I forecasted for the Windward Islands, my forecast is for Jamaica specifically, you're going to start seeing conditions roll downhill. It's not going to be the worst of it. You're going to start to feel that there's a storm coming between 3 to 6 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time. And then from there, you're going to have a system parked right off the coast, whether it's coming in or moving to your immediate south around 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, okay? And then shortly after that, same timetable, if you kind of extrapolate it forward, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. is when the Cayman Islands are going to start to feel the influence, and then just after that, we're going to see the ish, okay? I wanted to pull up, I wanted to have this pulled up on Weather Nerds, because if you notice from yesterday at 0Z or last night at 0Z to today, we're seeing more strengthening members pulling back up towards the coastline. You know, for my Florida fans out there, one random member going for the panhandle. So, you know, if you guys want to have a silly moment just for the sake of being lighthearted, we have one member showing a Cat 2 hurricane going for Panama City, Florida. We have the one outlier, of course, have to rope Florida back into it just for a funny moment. This is what I really want you guys to pay attention to. I love weathermodels.com for this. I'll go ahead and zoom the image in so you guys can see a little bit better. And what we have here is this is going to be today's 12Z European ensembles and yesterday or this overnight hour 0Z ensembles here on the right-hand side. I love weather models because you can do these 2, 3, or 4 panel overlays, and I want you guys to see the difference here. So if you look at 12, actually, pardon me, I'm sorry, I went 24 hours different. Let me clear the ink down here. I went 24 hours. So this is 12 Zulu on 1 July. This is 12 Zulu on 30 June. Okay? You can't see the 30 June because it's behind my head, but either way, we're doing a comparison here. So if you notice, we're still seeing a huge fanning effect, guys. The models, for some strange reason, they're not dialing in yet. We're getting closer, but we're not dialing in with this system. And what that tells me is From a forecasting perspective, the fact that we are still very, very much so fanned out. We have a little bit of a closer amount of agreement compared to yesterday to today. We're closing in, but what this tells me is the model ensembles are not comfortable with the pattern. They're not comfortable with the pattern. They're not comfortable with this storm. They are still fairly not confident on where this thing's going to go. If you notice the difference here compared to here, you can see every 50 or 51 ensemble members, all 51 members of the European model are in agreement. Yep, it's going to track like that. Then, as you get further down the road, just like our chat tonight, we start to see the ensemble members, the individual members like, well, it could go this way. I'm thinking it might nudge this way, might go this way. And we start to see them broadening out. And what that tells me is three different things. Number one, the euro is struggling with its intensity still. Number two, the euro is struggling with how fast it'll be moving. Number three, the euro is struggling with the steering patterns, okay? And that's not good. It's not good because it's going to be, we're losing lead time if we can't narrow that down. And if you go to 12 Zulu yesterday and you look at the fanning out, huge group from western Alabama all the way through to Texas and Mexico, the Bay of Campeche, we're still seeing pretty much the same thing. We have not gotten any better. We have not gotten any better. In fact, our strong ensembles have kind of converged a little bit on Texas and Louisiana. So there's so many different variables we don't know. So I just need people watching. That is the key takeaway here, guys. We need people watching. We're not done yet. The Windwards and the Lesser Antilles are pretty much done with hurricane activity, but we got a long way to go still. Now, we're going to look at our hurricane models because the hurricane models have been doing a fantastic job with the system. I've let 18 Zulu populate for all of our models here so we can take a look at it from the big picture view. I believe the H-Wharf should be all the way in now. Yep, no, this is 12 Zulu 18. There we go. All right, cool. So we have all of our halves model and our H-Wharf in. Each of these models, to include the H-Wharf, has been doing a good thing. Or has been doing good, has been doing good. So this is our halves B. The halves B is verifying wonderfully. This is 940 millibars at 0Z. If we come back to the very beginning, 938 millibars. So we're doing very good for ourselves. The halves models are on this system like white on rice. If you follow this through time, you can see our tropical storm conditions are going to be arriving on the Hispaniola coastline of Dominican Republic and Haiti early morning hours of July 3rd. 03Z would equate to about, well, we'll say late evening. This is going to be about 11 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. Then you go forward, you move the clock to 6 Zulu. This is 2 a.m. And as I mentioned in my timetable, we're going to start to see impacts going downhill or influence of this storm going downhill between 3 to 6 o'clock for Jamaica. You're going to start to feel the effects. The halves B, unfortunately, takes it just a hair towards the north. I just realized, let me adjust my screen here. I have it still zoomed in from the previous chart. I apologize. There we go. Now we can see the big picture here. The halves B model is holding its intensity. The halves B model has followed this thing perfectly. It's been within a millibar or two of the overall intensity, and the timing of this intensification and de-intensification, if that's even a word, has been almost spot on, neck and neck. So we got to put a little bit of allegiance in this model, and that's concerning. This shows a 953 millibar major hurricane knocking on the door of Jamaica at 18 Zulu, middle of the day in the afternoon on Wednesday the 3rd. And then from there, we're going to start to see conditions continuing to go downhill for the Cayman Islands, and then we're moving towards the Yucatan Peninsula. And you can see we're slowly but surely jogging this thing towards the north. If you look at 12Z, we were a little bit closer to Belize City. You go to 18 Zulu, we've taken about a degree of latitude and moved it towards the north. I haven't seen the end of this model run. So we're expecting re-intensification before it collides with Mexico here on the 18 Zulu halves B model. So that's a good sign. It looks like we're going to hold that anticyclone over the Gulf of Mexico. You can see it right here. We have high pressure spinning around. That's going to nudge it into Mexico. Possibly, we're going to have to see if the adjustments happen, possibly headed up towards Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi, that's the second time I've genuinely accidentally messed that up. The Brownsville area. We switch over to the halves A model. The halves A model is thinking more or less the same thing, albeit a more rapid deceleration in intensity. You can see a huge margin of error here. Same timing. The timing is still fairly good for what we're expecting here. Throughout the morning hours, conditions are going to go downhill. Then during the rest of the day, we're going to see the worst that this storm has to offer for Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. From there, the HAFS A model wants it to gain a little bit more latitude. You can see here that we are tracking up towards southern Texas. You see the spread here? So it's kind of, I can look at this from a number of different perspectives. The first perspective is we're still out to lunch because we have one model doing this, one model doing this. The problem with that is if we were to go back to 12Z, if you guys remember, especially this morning during our briefing, if I were to go back to 6Z and show you guys our 6Z output, look at how much further to the south our systems are from the HAFS A model to the HAFS B at 6Z this morning. Massive difference. So the problem here is, number one, the models still don't know. The problem, two, we're seeing a general trend towards the north regardless. This is 6Z when I briefed a large majority of you this morning. This is 18Z. This evening you go to the end, and we're seeing it gaining some latitude. The same thing with the HAFS A model. So we're going to need to pay attention. This is why I need folks watching this very closely, especially in Texas. Louisiana, you're not off the hook, but I'm not as, I'm not as investigative with Louisiana. I'm more so watching for Texas. And you can see that our HAFS B is trying to nudge it towards the north. Our HAFS A model is definitely nudging it towards that southern Texas border. Let's take a look at the H-Wharf. The H-Wharf has also been doing a phenomenal job with this system. Like the HAFS B model, it does anticipate it will manage to hold on to hurricane characteristics all the way through its lifetime. And then the H-Wharf, oh crap, okay. So the H-Wharf is pulling it north. The H-Wharf is definitely pulling it north. It looks like we have a reinforcing area of high pressure to the north here. I can see some anticyclonic flow in our winds. So we're going to have to see what this northerly trend does. So, crap, I hadn't looked at this. I hadn't looked at the full run. The H-Wharf comes in last in terms of our hurricane models. The H-Wharf is the last one to populate, so I had not looked at this before this live stream. So I need you guys wide awake. I need you guys wide awake in Texas and western Louisiana, to tell you the truth. I need you guys wide awake for sure. We need to pay close attention to this. The key takeaway here is what happens in the central Caribbean. If this thing plummets in intensity, we're good. We can lock in a forecast that Texas, Louisiana, Gulf Coast are not going to happen. If this manages to hold on to intensity, we're going to have to keep our eyes peeled all the way to the last second, because now we have our HAFS A model running for southern Texas. We have our H-Wharf headed up towards central Texas. We have our HAFS B model, which has been doing the best with this system, staying down towards the south. So for our viewers down there, and I see people still asking for Jamaica, Cayman Islands, you guys are going to get it regardless. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's not going to be any wiggling and wobbling. Our consensus is just about locked in, and we're getting closer to locking in for Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. You're going to feel it. Whether you feel a tropical storm or a Cat 2 hurricane, the models are still struggling. We'll have to wait until tomorrow morning to see what our fresh model data after the latest recon run can suggest, because they're still plugging this data in. Since we have reconnaissance aircraft going in there right now looking at the winds and getting that data, we're probably going to get fresh model data at 0Z and 6Z tomorrow morning, which I will be available for you guys to brief. And then we're going to see conditions slowly going downhill as we get into Wednesday for Jamaica, Cayman Islands. We're going to be looking at whether or not they're going to get a direct hit from a strong storm, a southerly skirt from a strong storm, or a possibly weaker storm. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm definitely not digging the trends here. In fact, what's very, very spooky about this, we're going to have to watch this very closely, because the H-Wharf has not backed down from this. If you go back to 0Z this morning, the H-Wharf had it moving in, and then you go to 6Z, pulling it towards the north, 12Z, pulling it towards the north. You go to 18Z, pulling it towards the north. So we're seeing those trends. And like Mike, if you're still in the chat, tuning in from New Orleans, Mike, you know who you are. I've been mentioning when we messaged back and forth on Instagram that it seems like, through my experience, our global models like the Euro, the GFS, the Icon, all that fun jazz, they don't seem to dial in our steering pattern until we're within about 2 to 3 days. 72 hours. Sometimes, if it's a more definitive pattern, we'll see it at about day 3, day 4. We're still about 6 days away from anything moving into the Bay of Campeche, the Gulf of Mexico. So we're not locked in yet, and I anticipate there's going to be some more wiggling and wobbling, but I'm not a fan of how well the H-Wharf has been verifying, and we're seeing this nudging effect. We're seeing nudging up towards the north here. So I just need you guys paying attention, okay? It is not over until it's over. That is the key takeaway, and I hate being Mr. Ambiguous, Mr. Mystery. That's not what I'm doing here, but the trends are your friends is the key catchphrase for tropical forecasting, for any forecasting, and I'm noticing that we had a lot of guidance down here, and now the spread has kind of done this. So we've nudged it. We've definitely seen a nudge. Our weaker ensembles keep it crashing and burning, but if we manage to hold intensity, whether it be even a high-end tropical storm to a Category 1 hurricane, we got to start speculating how much of this northward bias is going to come into play. So we are not out of the woods just yet. I also wanted to show you guys just willy-nilly, the Icon hated this system. The Icon was the last system, or the last model of our overall global models to buy into this system. The Icon hated it. Now it's finally on track, and I wanted you guys to look at 18 Zulu, because check this out. There's a big difference between where we were earlier on and now. The GFS, I do think that the GFS is out to lunch. We're finally back to seeing our GFS isms, because if you look, it's expecting it to completely disappear as it moves through the Caribbean. I'm not putting a lot of allegiance in the GFS anymore. The GFS was doing good, but the GFS is expecting this thing to be completely gone as it moves through Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. So the GFS is thinking you're not going to get anything. The GFS is thinking that we're not going to see anything, much of anything really, for Jamaica and especially the Cayman Islands. The Cayman Islands, GFS is thinking you're going to have a remnant low, and I'm not buying into that at all. I don't think this is like our least likely outcome at this point. This thing is not going to completely just disappear. And if you look, the GFS is thinking we're not going to have anything in our Bay of Campeche. I really don't think that's going to happen. This is a new outlier, but regardless, 18Z GFS does pull it into southern Texas. So, I mean, even if we have a remnant low, it's still pulling it up. It's still pulling it towards the north. If you come over here to our current track guidance, you can see that the track guidance and our ensembles are starting to pick up on that northward turn as well. These, I don't know when this initializes, but this doesn't even line up with what's on the models right now, so I don't know what's going on there, but we're slowly but surely starting to see trends that are going to be pulling it back towards the north, and we'll have to see exactly how long that happens, if it continues to happen, or if we go back down towards the south tomorrow. You can see our GFS ensembles are definitely keeping us getting that slow nudge towards the north, albeit intensity I think is fairly weak. You go back to our Canadian ensembles, the Canadian ensembles are definitely seeing it getting pulled back around. You can see riding that outer westerly periphery of our anticyclone as that trough tries to dig in. So we have 3 major players on the game board here, and I'll leave you with that. Here it goes, our EPS. We'll go back to the North Atlantic view, and we'll take a look at our 500 millibar anomalies here. Right there. So if you guys look, we have troughing coming down out of the United States, and our ridge is being bumped over the eastern United States. So there's your, more or less, your window, your weakness in the ridge. Jamaica's going to get it. For those of you still asking about Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, you guys are going to get it. We got to wait until tomorrow for us to start dialing in our intensity forecasts. I don't think the GFS and the Euro are correct in trying to make this thing disappear entirely. It's not going to be a David Blaine whoosh, and it's as if it never happened. So we're going to have to wait until tomorrow, unfortunately, to dial in our forecasts. for intensity. Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, Haiti, you're going to start seeing stuff go downhill as we get towards the tail end of tomorrow night. And then Jamaica and then Cayman Islands, you're going to see it as we go through the day on July 3rd. And then Belize, Yucatan, whether it goes north or south, you're going to start seeing it late July 4th and into July 5th. And then finally, last but not least, before it drops off the planet and we're done, Mexico to Texas, Louisiana, etc. With that huge spread, it's going to be July 6th to July 7th. So if you look at the calendar, we still have a full week ahead of us. Oh, and by the way, I completely forgot. We got our new CanSips data. And there's already folks trying to cancel the season for some dumb reason. I don't know why, but there's August, still looking at much of the same. August, I think, is going to be Florida's month. I don't think we're going to see anything through July. We'll have to see if something sneaks in at the end of July into August, but I don't think Florida is going to be under the gun for anything in July. Right now, as it stands, these upcoming systems, Beryl, and if 96L decides to suddenly develop, I really don't think anything's going to happen. But August, I think we need to be wide open, eyes peeled here in the southeast, because that is when you can see in the precip here, our protective barrier, that Florida shield, is naturally going to retrograde. So if there are more of these Caribbean systems with an even better environment down there in August, that's game on. So I'm telling you, August, I think, is going to be the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast. Right now, we're still seeing a dominant ridge pattern, so Louisiana, Texas, and Mexico are going to be our primary areas as we go through July, even towards the tail end of July, and then August. August is when we're going to have to watch here in Florida. My gut has been right about this hurricane season so far, so I would say put at least a little faith in my weather gut instinct here. I think August is when we're going to have to watch for our Caribbean systems moving up towards Florida, somewhere in the southeast and the mid-Atlantic. Then you can see September, we're starting to see more of our generalized, whether they be out to sea long trackers or long trackers that do make a run for the United States. September has always been our mixed bag kind of month. And then October, we're starting to see things slowly but surely calm down, but we're still going to have a lot of potential activity. November, still a lot of decent activity. And then finally, tropics hopefully are going to calm down. It still looks like there's some very, very weak indications we could have some random looking fish storms out there in December. Hopefully not. That's your quick glance at our latest CanSips data. And another thing I want us to pay attention to as well is if you come on over here, La Nina, she's kind of making a late start. Massive difference in our sea surface temp anomalies here. So if you go back to, say, April 1st, La Nina for July. Wrong. You go here to now, massive difference in the way that we've initialized. We're looking at a cool neutral, possibly still a cool neutral, pushing towards a weak La Nina, and then finally maybe a weak La Nina by the time we're into October. So we might have somewhat of a La Nina winter. But for the hurricane season, the peak hurricane season, I think we're safe at estimating we're going to be in a cool neutral pattern. Really do think we're going to be in a cool neutral pattern, and as we've learned historically, that opens up the realm of 2004, and that opens up the realm of 2017 as potential algorithms that we may want to pay attention to and use for future reference. So yeah, there you go, guys. Once again, for the timetable, for Hispaniola, the entire island, Haiti, Dominican Republic, you're going to start seeing impacts late tomorrow night and through July 3rd. Jamaica, conditions are going to go start downhill for July 3rd first half, and then you're going to be in the thick of it during the day on July 3rd, and then Cayman Islands, you're right behind them into the afternoon, late or early evening hours of July 3rd. Cayman Islands, you're going to start to realize the effects. Then we're spread out. Unfortunately. What's going on in the chat? Because I see somebody saying that you're getting mad. Who's causing ruckus in the chat? All right, anyways. With as big of a population we have in the chat tonight, it's kind of a given that we're going to have some ruckus going on out there. But there's your look at the newest climate data. We have our European outlook coming out on July 4th and on Independence Day. And then we have our NMME coming out on July 7th. So we have a couple more of our seasonal outlooks to finally take a 30-day glance at what August has in store for us. And yeah, so I really do think August is going to be our month here in the Southeast. I really do. Hopefully not, Andrew G. Hopefully not. We can technically say we've already had 1 of 7. So we have 6 to go to see what happens here. We, believe it or not, Andrew G., we've already had 1 of 7, so we can strike that off, unfortunately. And it's only June. We're now officially into July. So tonight, for my viewers out there in Puerto Rico, the U.S. British Virgin Islands, I can't forget about you guys, and the Leeward Islands, we're going to continue to see the wraparound feeder banding from Beryl, where you're going to continue to see some on and off thunderstorm activity. Expect some elevated winds, some stronger winds within these stronger thunderstorms, okay? That is going to be on the table. Same thing with Puerto Rico into Dominican Republic tomorrow. You're going to continue to see those feeder bands wrapping around the north side of that system, so your thunderstorm coverage, your cloud coverage is going to be up. You're going to have embedded winds in those thunderstorms as well. Then Hispaniola, you're going to start to see whatever tropical storm force conditions along your south and southwest coastline as we get into the very early evening hours tomorrow. As we start the day on July 3rd, Jamaica is going to start to see the influence, and it will be in the thick of it by middle of the day on July 3rd, and then we'll follow the Cayman Islands shortly after that. Belize, throughout the Yucatan Peninsula, from Belize to the Yucatan Peninsula, your day is going to be late July 4th into July 5th, and then from there on out, we're struggling. From there on out, we're still struggling, so I'm not even going to brief you guys that much further into time. So, Alden Morgan, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. To tell you the truth, guys, when I wake up tomorrow morning, we're going to make a determination on if we're going to be doing an evening live stream tomorrow. I'll tell you the truth. I need a moment to recoup. Today was a rough day. So when we get up tomorrow, we're going to do our 9 o'clock morning brief here on the channel. And if you don't mind, please, if you have other social media, please follow me on my other social media platforms, my X, my Instagram, my TikTok, because you will manage to see more updates on there. They're a lot more low threat than these live streams and having to put down the forecasting data like I have, drawn and charting everything out with my notes. So tomorrow, to tell you the truth, I might not do an evening update, and that's just for my own energy's sake, if you guys can understand that and hopefully respect that. If there's obviously a big change, if we suddenly see at 12Z that things are going way up like this, then obviously I'll make time. But right now, with July 2nd, we're going to be in between. We're not going to be seeing major impacts. We're not going to be seeing anything catastrophic. So it's going to be July 3rd, Wednesday, when we're probably back in here doing our 2 briefings again, first thing in the morning and then in the evening, okay? Oh yeah, Alfalfa Bill Enjoyer, we're definitely going to brief, that's for sure. We're going to do one at 9 a.m. tomorrow, but for my own mental health, with as exhausted and beat down I've been over the last 72 hours, I might just hold off on doing an 8 p.m., to tell you the truth. Just because we're going to be in between impacts. We're not going to be seeing a landfall. We're not going to be seeing the intense impacts. That's going to be July 3rd. July 3rd is when things are going to be coming up towards Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. We'll kind of wrap up the live stream looking at our latest cone. So as you can see, tomorrow we're going to be kind of like a cruise. Tomorrow we're going to be out to sea. And then when we're rolling into Wednesday is when, hey, they just upgraded hurricane warning for Jamaica. Glad we caught that. Glad we came back here. Tropical storm warnings for Hispaniola. You can see that the guidance here is we're going to be out to sea throughout the day on Tuesday. So we're going to come back and brief you guys tomorrow morning so we can get you ahead of what to expect for the following 24 hours. And then we'll be back here first thing in the morning on Wednesday with our 2 live streams to cover down with what's happening in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, okay? So not going to be tomorrow we're just going to go down to 1. That's all. We're just going to go down to 1. I'm still going to be here. We're going to cover you guys up and get you the information. I'll make sure to dial in my internal forecast to relay to you guys. And if and only if we suddenly see our track go from this to this, are we going to be doing an evening live stream. If there's a big update, I'm telling you now, if there's a big update, we will do 2 tomorrow, okay? But as it stands right now, I would love just to get an evening to relax, have a normal dinner, and, go to bed at a semi-reasonable time. All right? So if you could do me that favor of nudging the like button, let's get this information out there. I know we're in between impacts right now, so nothing really to worry about. Windward Islands are back in a safe haven. We are beyond. We can begin the recovery process. U.S. British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the Leeward Islands, we're going to have feeder banding, but not a whole lot activity for the next 24 hours. You're just going to see your rain chances going up. And then Hispaniola, very early morning hours of Wednesday, we might see some tropical storm impacts as we get into very early morning, as you can see here on Wednesday. And then Jamaica, Cayman Islands, it's game on as we go through Wednesday into early Thursday. And then just like we've been alluding to, guys, July 4th into July 5th is going to be Mexico and Belize, maybe even Guatemala, seeing some impacts from this. You never know, train production, Zachary. We will see. So if you have the means of following me on other social media platforms, feel free to do so, but we're going to start kicking out. Thank you all very much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please drop them in the comments section down below. I'll definitely make it a point to get back to you. I spent a long time getting back to everyone's comments from yesterday and this morning. Love talking to you guys. I hope that the comments were worth your while, worth your time. I try to make them as full-hearted as possible. And I try to not make them just the usual, yeah, I approve. Sounds good. I try to write you guys sincere messages, no matter if I have 5 comments or 500 comments. I'll try to make it as sincere and unique as possible. So if you have any questions, please leave them down below. If you just want to say hello, let me know where you're tuning in from. Absolutely, let me know that as well. Just drop a comment, nudge that like button. Let's get this information out, guys. And Daddy, to just give you a hint, when I say August for Florida, that's because we are seeing our Caribbean systems moving through like this or like this. Historically speaking, in August and into September, the ridge that's over the southeast moves off from here to here. So if you kind of do your math here, if you look at your geometry here, anything coming in the Caribbean is going to have a greater chance of doing this as we roll through August. So that's why I think August is going to be our time. The tropics are only getting started. They're only getting started, so we have a long hurricane season to go. We're only 1 month in, and we've had 3 named storms and a major hurricane, so we're already off to a roaring start after a bit of a slow but steady increase. So yeah, thank you all very much for the kind donations this evening. I didn't not notice them. I just hadn't had a chance to say anything. I'm going to go have some dinner now, guys, and we'll see you in the morning. Like I said, please leave me a question, comment, or concern. Please consider clicking subscribe, nudging that like button, and sharing this information with your friends, loved one, with your neighbors. Follow me on my other social media platforms, my X, my Instagram, my TikTok. If we don't do an evening live stream tomorrow, I will be doing an evening update on those platforms. Just going to be a lot more low threat, 2 to 3 minutes of a discussion to give you the general basics of what it is that I'm looking at, and then we'll see you again Wednesday morning. But we will see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Can guarantee that. And very, very much so up in the air in terms of whether or not we'll be doing an evening tomorrow. So with that being said, guys, I hope that everything is great in your neck of the woods. Prayers and positive energy as much as we can possibly bestow upon our Windward Island folks. And Lord willing, we can start to see them starting to chime back in the chat and give their testimonies. Hopefully within the next day or two. That is a good idea, One Nation Weather. I really need to. Once I can get a little more brain waves, once I can recoup from this. I'm actually looking forward to a break so I can get my brain back in one piece. So yeah, guys, have a wonderful rest of your Monday night. Happy July 1st. 4th of July holiday for us, for the folks who celebrate it, coming up in 3 days. I'm excited, especially as a current military service member and an Air Force veteran. To all my veterans out there and folks who are still serving, 4th of July is coming up, so I hope here in the United States and whoever else celebrates the 4th of July can have some fun and we'll talk again soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening, guys. This is Weather Center Nazario signing out.